This is all the textile waste that my small business produced in the past year, and today we're going to turn it into something new. This is every random scrap, every cut thread, random small pieces of foam and fabric, and we're making a floor poof, kind of more like an ottoman, honestly. Most floor poofs are only like 6 inches tall, like they're just little floor pillows, but I want a poof that is big enough to rest my feet on while I'm in my favorite little sit-in chair. So we're gonna use this as stuffing and use other scraps to make the outside, and I'm gonna show you how to do it all. We're gonna learn together because I've never done this before either. I do want to start off by saying that I have had a cold. I feel like this is in the way. Maybe not. Okay. I've been fighting a, hi Indy, hey buddy. I've been fighting a sinus infection for like 6 weeks now. Hi, do you want to be in the video? Here you go, now you're in the video. Yeah, is that perfect? Is that so good? You might still not be in the video. I think it cuts it off right here. I've had a sinus infection for the past couple weeks, so that was very cute, yeah. I'm coughing a lot, I'm drinking coffee. I sound a little stuffy, so sorry if I'm sneezing and stuffy, but I'm really excited about this project. I'm moving in like 10 days, and I've had all these scraps sitting around waiting for me to make time to do this project. So what a better time than it is literally December 31st, last day of the year, to refurbish some old and make something new. This is so many scraps. I might not use them all. I might have to make a second. But I'm really excited. Also, you do not need scraps to do this project. I'm using my scraps. I think it could be really fun if you have like old socks, or like old things that can't be donated or refurbished, to give them new life. So if you do sew a lot and you have scraps, like start saving your thread. Literally every piece of thread I like cut off, I put in a box and I keep it. Which might seem crazy. Like some of these pieces some of them are large, some of them are literally like little micro scraps. But just saving it up and using it for stuffing. I've used it for dog toys in the past, which is fine because my dog doesn't shred. But for some dogs that might tear things apart, that could get real messy. But I'm really excited, so let's get started. Okay. If you're new here, my name is Jules. I am a professional gear maker. I run a small gear company called Wild Brush. I have been sewing since I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I am a professional. I also have severe ADHD. I don't know if I should say severe. I have ADHD. So my videos tend to be a little bit chaotic. I also have a broken phone camera, so not the highest quality. I'm working. Hopefully, I'm really close to getting my videos monetized. And if I can make a little bit of money off of these, I can afford to upgrade my phone to sell this one, trade it in for a new one, because the phone camera is not the best. But I can't afford anything. Oh my god. Can't afford anything else right now. This is a very beginner-friendly project. I always say that I have ADHD, just so you know. Sometimes I can be, if you also are a neurodivergent, my videos might make a lot of sense to you and they might be really easy to follow. If you're not neurodivergent, you might get a little confused about my thought process and the way I explain things. I hope not. I hope that I'm clear. I've made it 28 years in my life with most people not realizing that I have ADHD. I didn't know until I was 24. Mask it pretty well. So I hope that this is a good video. We're in this together. I'm going to try to not go on tangents, and I'm going to try to make it clear and concise. But to start, let's get started. The things that you will need to be successful in this video. A pair of scissors or a rotary blade, some cutting instrument, You need some fabric. So I'm using fabric scraps. Some of these were given to me by friends. I bought this like scrap fabric remnant from Joann's a couple months ago because I thought this was so pretty. I don't even know how much this is. Half a yard. And I refurbished my friend's chair cover like a year ago. So I have scraps from that. Yeah, just a bunch of random scraps. I'm not going to use these all. But I wanted some options. That's a zipper. Wanted some options. So I would say you probably need about a yard of fabric. So if you want it all to be one color, off the top of my head, I would say a yard. You might need a yard and a quarter. But I think this is a really good way if you are someone that sews often and has a lot of scraps to use those scraps or go to the thrift store. I've thrifted a lot of fabric, and sometimes you can get those like just little scrap bits for not a lot of money, which is really cool. So cutting instrument, scraps. I'm also I want this to be washable since I have dogs and I'm also messy. So if you don't want it to be washable, you don't need this. But if you do want it to be washable, you need a zipper of sorts and a lining fabric. I haven't decided what quite I'm going to use for lining fabric. Some other scrap as well, just so you can take the cover off and the foam, the filling stays in the lining. You need something to stuff it with. So you could use some high density foam or stuffing from the fabric store. I'm using scraps. You could literally anything your heart thinks of. Old clothes, like you could put anything in here. And then I was gonna just sketch out the shape on a piece of paper, but I was actually Googling and I found this free petal template because the easiest way to do this would to just be 2 circles connected by a thing. Quick and easy. But I thought that this would be really cute. It kind of gives it a more like scalloped edge, so a little flowery. So I downloaded this petal template and there is a tutorial that goes along with this, but I'm not following it because it's a floor cushion and I want it to be tall and I also do my own thing. So whatever, I downloaded this. I don't remember where I got it from, if I'm being honest, but if you Google like floor poof, this will probably come up. I'll try to link it. Thank you to whoever made this, because this is exactly what I was going to draw out, and now I don't have to worry about if it's even or not. So some tape and scissors to cut it out. You need a machine. I'm just using a straight stitch basic machine. Mine's a Brother, and some all-purpose thread, and then we'll be good to go. I cut out the template, I taped it together. You do not need the template. You can literally draw this out. Just make sure you have a straight edge, that it's even on both sides. You can use any type of curved edge if you have like a bowl or a, what are those called? The thing that holds a point and you spin it. Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. You just need it to be even, because otherwise it won't work. I'm laying out my scraps. And kind of deciding on the vision for all of this. I have a bunch of scraps that were mainly given to me by my friend Ashley, but you could use a bunch of different stuff. You could make it all the same. I'm thinking that I'm gonna make the top kind of patchworky. So each petal, you need 8 petals for the top and then 8 petals for the bottom. If you're planning on just having like the top up all the time, the bottom could literally be anything. It could be like solid, non-slip fabric. You can use like whatever you want because no one will see it. It's going to be on the ground. I am thinking, because I really love this fabric and I think there might be enough to make one side that's all of this, and honestly it goes so well. I might just cut out 16 petals and then see how I want to mix and match them. I already do that, but I'm just gonna iron all of these. Always make sure you check your settings so that you don't melt your fabric. That is important. Now I'm just going to lay out my fabric and start making cuts. We need 8 for the top and 8 for the bottom. So we have one side and another. I was originally going to do this all the same, but I think this just looks so cute together. And I'm making it so I could flip it either way. So I kind of have this more pink side, and I'm sorry again that my camera isn't better quality. What if I, oops, that doesn't really help. Really close. Also doesn't really help, but you can see the detail of the fabric a little bit more. So this side is more pink and green, and then this side is also has some pink, so ties it together, but more blue and green. And then I'll have to figure out what I want to do for the sides of it. I'm so excited. Again, you can use any machine that you want. I'm just gonna get my plug in here. This is just, it's a fancy machine. If I'm being honest, this is a very fancy machine. But you can use whatever. I'm just gonna sew everything with a straight stitch. If you have a serger, you could serge the edges or like zigzag stitch it to just give it a little bit more strength. But honestly, I'm lazy and I'm not going to do that. I will just be careful when I wash it to make sure that I wash it right side out, so not turning it inside out, so none of the seams are exposed, with the zippered closure so that it doesn't unravel. That's the big fear, is unraveling. We are plugged in. Turn that on. I'm just using some pretty standard all-purpose thread. I should have a bobbin in here already. I gave you all these instructions and then I ran out of phone storage. So we're gonna do it again. I'm manifesting this. By the end of the month, I will have a new phone. So all we're doing is we're gonna take a petal and lay it on top of another one. You can pin them together if you want. I'm just kind of starting at the edge and then adjusting all the way down. This fabric does have a little bit of stretch in it, so make sure that whatever fabric you have, you're not stretching it as you go. And we are just sewing. I'm sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That way I can just use the edge of my foot as my guide. And I'm back stitching at the start and end of each stitch. So if you don't know what that means, you're gonna put your foot down and start sewing. I'm just, again, lining up the edges as I go. And you're gonna sew forward a couple stitches, maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch. You're gonna press that button or pull that lever and reverse the stitch all the way back to the start. And then you're gonna sew all the way down and do the same thing when you hit the other end. And the more that you sew, the more interesting this like center is gonna get a little chunky. So just be mindful of which way you are laying your seams as you re-sew over that center seam. I'm just gonna push them all to the left. So when I get to the end, I'm sewing all the way, reversing back up about 1 inch, and then sewing all the way, cutting my threads. And we're just gonna do that for the whole way around. Okay, so I would pause the video now and finish sewing until you have 4 halves. Pause. If you're back, now you have 4 halves. So they should look like these, half circles. I love cutting off any extra threads just so they don't accidentally end up in the same side. We are now just going to lay the tops, and I changed the dimensions, so I hope that's not confusing. Now we're at 1 zoom instead of 0.5. We're gonna lay the halves on top of each other, and you can again pin it if you want. Back stitching at the front and back and just joining them together. Again, being mindful of the direction that the seams are laying in the center as you sew over it, just so you don't get it extra chunky. I'm just gonna kind of lay it flat, and then after this, I'm gonna iron it again. I am gonna backstitch in the center of the pinwheel, just because that's a lot of seams coming together, and that's like the main stress point. So that way there is no separation, everything is like really held together, and then continue onward. Look at these! Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, so I'm just going to iron down the seams. This will just give it a nice crisp finish, make it nice and smooth. This one turned out a little wonky, as you can tell. This fabric has no stretch in this fabric. Pretty stretchy, because my friend used it to make shorts, so it's like comfortable. So this one's not a perfect pinwheel, but I kind of like it. So I'm just gonna lay them down. I am honestly going to chop some of this extra, which is fun. This like chunky part, get it out of the way. And then that can go in our stuffing box. And then I'm just gonna lay these wrong side up and iron the seams the same way that they're sewn down. Yeah, again, just makes it nice and smooth. It's called pressing the seams. If you sew clothes, this is like a vital, literally a vital part to sewing clothes. This is how you get things nice and crisp, is making sure that you press them. It feels like magic. Wow. This is a little bit bigger than I was expecting it to be, but I think it's gonna be so nice. See, it lays so much flatter and nicer. You can even tell comparing the way that these lay. This is like pretty chunky and fluffy, and this just lays nice and smooth. If you want, you can even go over the front and just like really get everything nice and flat. It just will make it look cleaner. This is not necessary if you don't own an iron, but it just like makes it look more professional. So now we need some measurement tool. I'm using a measuring tape, but you can use like a string or anything that is non-stretchable to just test out the circumference. So I'm just going to start, my measuring tape starts at 1, so I take whatever number and I minus 1, but I'm just gonna start in the corner, and just kind of wrap around. This is scalloped, which makes it a little bit more difficult to guess, but that's okay. I'm gonna just estimate, and I'm gonna sew it in a manner that will let me adjust it a little bit. 58 1/4, and that's 19 3/4. So that's 20 plus 58, which is 78. 78 inches, plus I want to add 1/2 inch for seam allowance. There's a chance that that's a little too big or a little too small. So I'm gonna go with just an even, I was at 78, I'm gonna go with 79. And then I can always bring it in if it's too much. It's a little bit harder to extend the fabric. So I'm going to find a piece of fabric that is 78. I probably will need to join 2 pieces of fabric together because most fabrics are about like 54 inches wide, 48 inches wide. And then I have to decide on how tall I want it to be. So if you want this to be like a floor cushion, you could make it 6 inches tall. I got so fed up that I am now using my roommate's phone, so we will be able to get through the rest of this easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl. So by now, we should have 2 outsides. I'm gonna use this blue, I think it's a tablecloth actually. I got this from a clothing swap. Someone bought it from Goodwill, I think. And I'm gonna cut a piece that is 79 inches by 15 1/2. That felt like the perfect height. I went upstairs and I measured all of my my couch, and I have 2 chairs just to see like about the right height. And 15.5 gives you like a perfect transition. And I'm really excited. So I'm gonna cut that, and then we'll do the zipper and join everything together. Again, when you pick your height, you wanna make sure that you're adding seam allowance. So since I'm sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm adding 1/2 inch to the total height. Same with that width. If you measured, like I measured, I think 77.5 or something. So 78. I made mine a little bit bigger just in case, because you can always make it smaller, but you cannot, I mean, you could sew extenders, but to make it look nice and smooth, you can't do that. Okay. So this does have kind of this funny little border on it that is thicker, but I might keep it. I think it's kind of cute. I might cut it off at the sides because it won't be even on both sides. But I think I'll keep it along the bottom. And get this. So I'm just gonna, I want it to be 15.5. I'm gonna sew it all the way around on one side and then do the zipper on the other side. So that way I have the correct length on this piece before I get a zipper involved, to make sure that I have room to, you know, join the seams when I actually connect this. Because if you have the exact measurement, like if you use string and you are very meticulous about your measurement, you can just sew that seam together. I am leaving things up to chance because I think that it just gives me a little bit of room. So I'm just gonna leave about 1 inch of fabric here, and I will start sewing, about 1 inch in, back stitching at the start, and that way when I get all the way around, if this is the proper length, I can just sew it together and then refinish it. And if it's not the proper length, I can adjust. I can either cut it or add some. So I'm just gonna sew all the way around. Oh my God, it's perfect. It's so perfect. Okay, so, wow, good to know. I am going, it's a good thing I didn't cut off this side. I'm going to sew, honestly, like right up to the base, because seeing that, this will be where I'm stitching. So I can pin that, except I don't know where I put my pins. I'm just gonna pull this all out, but you just want to sew close enough, and then have some way to mark where you're stitching, since there is a little extra fabric that I will be cutting off. So I'm just gonna sew like right up to that base. I can kind of feel where it gets thick, back stitch, and bring my thread out. Wow, this is so nice. Okay, and then I'm just kind of folding it over like that. Again, you can measure this. I'm gonna eyeball it because that's what I like to do. So you have, I can see right where the fabric is right there. And I want to put it basically right on that mark. We don't want to sew the top / bottom, the flat part of it. We don't want to sew that into this seam because then you'll have a little fold in the fabric, but you want to get as close as you possibly can. Again, the responsible thing would be to get your measuring tape or your ruler and mark all the way down. I'm just going to eyeball exactly this. Back stitching, I don't know if I already did that, back stitching at the front and at the top, but I am just going to guesstimate this all the way, and then back stitching again. And then I'm gonna trim off this excess just to not have bulk but you could honestly just fold it over and sew. Okay, so now we just have to finish off that hole. Again, if you did it well, like I didn't actually sew into this at all, but it's flush, which is so crazy. Like there is literally just, that is the gap. I don't even have to finish this, but I'm going to because that's the responsible thing to do. Now we have this, which this thing's going to be bigger than I was expecting it to be. But I think it's going to be so cute and comfy. Now we have to do the other side. So this side is more complicated because it has a zipper. If you do not want it to be washable, like if you don't want to be able to take the cover off, you will just repeat the same thing in leaving a gap for the stuffing, but you'll just sew it all down. You can even sew the whole thing and then seam rip a hole. And we'll stuff it together. You can just like skip to the stuffing part, but if you want a zipper because you're like me and you will spill something on it and you do want to wash it, we're gonna do that next. So I personally think it's nice to have like a little zipper cover so that the zipper's not exposed. So you can do that one or two ways. I honestly am just gonna cut this edging off of this sheet and use that because I have the whole width plus that I need right here, and it's already sealed. If you're using fabric that doesn't happen to just be a tablecloth and it has a raw edge, obviously we don't want that exposed because it will start to fray. All you're gonna do is fold it over and we'll sew it just like that in a strip. So this is what, 1 3/4 inches. Honestly, it could even be less than that and it would be fine because my zippers are not that thick. But if you have like a 1-inch zipper, you just want a little bit longer than that zipper so it's fully covered and encased in there. So if you're using a 1-inch zipper, you'd probably want to cut a 3-inch strip, and then you'll just fold that strip in half. And that, the raw edges, is what will go along the outer edge of this. I hope that makes sense. That way you're left with just the smooth fold exposed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Cut your strip. You want it to be the same length as what you just did. And we're gonna approach joining it exactly the way that we did on the other side. Because now this part, the actual siding, is like fully joined together. But just gives it a little adjustability, which I'm always a fan of. Just makes it easier than having to seam rip the whole thing and cut a new piece of fabric. I'm also gonna cut one more piece of fabric. This is our last cut, for this part. I just want the single layer. And I want it to be about the width of my zipper, which I haven't decided. The white zipper I think would look better than the black zipper, but the black zipper I have is bigger. You won't be able to see it really. The white zipper is cute, so we're going to use the white zipper. But we want it to be probably about 1/4 inch thicker than the white zipper, and we are just going to make a little, what will be the zipper stop. So this will be the spine of the zipper, is always what I call it, and this will make so much more sense in approximately a minute. But I'm going to cut a piece of fabric that is approximately the length of one of these curves, and the width plus 1/4 inch of my zipper. So my zipper is about 1 inch. I'm going to cut it at 1 1/4 inches, about 9 3/4 inches. So do 9 3/4 with 1 1/4 inches. We just have this little guy. So we're going to grab your zipper shield, I guess I'll call it, zipper cover, your zipper spine or zipper end, and this little guy right here, and your zipper, and we're gonna head back to the machine. Okay. So like I said, we're gonna take the same approach as we did on the other side. This is my zipper chain. This is obviously a bulk order. You do not need zipper chain. You would just need like a 60 to 70 inch zipper, which is pretty long. But you can usually buy zipper chain in like 5-foot segments. And it's something I use every single day. So it's really nice. You buy zipper chains, you have to put the poles on yourself. But it's really nice. I only buy YKK. They're the only people I trust. Other zippers, questionable. And to start, we're going to take that spine and place it right sides together on the zipper, and we are just going to stitch over that 4 or 5 times. So I'm just going to sew all the way down, back stitch, all the way down, back stitch, and join this so that there is a zipper stop. Otherwise, you could just zip the pole all the way off, which would not be great. Then you lost your zipper pole, and then you can't actually use your zipper. So, spine, right sides together, and down. Back. My automatic thread cutter. It's not doing the best. I'm just gonna trim the excess, and then something that's good to just prevent fraying, if you don't have like a webbing cutter like I have or a hot knife, is you can just take a standard lighter and just burn those edges. It just keeps it a little bit more sealed. Not that it really matters because this won't get a lot of wear and tear, but that way you just know that that won't unravel. So now we have this whole long zipper chain in the spine, and by sewing the right sides together, it's nice and clean. And we can get sewing now. Re-sew that first part, and that way there's both have excess fabric. I will have to stop to complete this one before I stop to complete that one, but then I get to do it all in one step. And now we have the double layer, so we're paying attention. I'm gonna, honestly, for me, it makes the most sense to like put the collar or the zipper shield, the zipper cover down and just kind of hold it in place if you're not using pins, because I almost never use pins unless I really have to. And then add the zipper on top of that. And we're just gonna do that all the way around. Again, I'm making those relief cuts. This zipper is going to be kind of chunky to use, solely because it is petal shaped. So it's going to have these like little indents that it's going into. But honestly, it's probably something I'll wash once a year. I know myself. I just want the ability to wash it, so it doesn't matter if the zipper is super smooth or not. You might just need to be a little careful while you're zipping and unzipping to not pull it off its course. Petal seam, and then back stitch. So now I have this mainly finished front collar, whatever it's called. And we're just gonna do exactly what we did on the other side, except twice. We're gonna do it once with the zipper. So I'm gonna trim those threads away, but kind of piecing together exactly where this needs to be joined. Right there. zipper chain. And a very important step, not to be forgotten, is to put on a zipper pull. So to do so, if you've never done this before, you're gonna separate the chain just a little bit, and grab the zipper and place it on the teeth. These are tiny, so this one's a little bit more difficult. But I like to, if you look at the anatomy of this guy, they have this entryway into the zipper, and then where it actually starts zipping. So you want to place both sides kind of evenly in that entryway, the foyer, before you push on. I find it easiest to hold the zipper tape, kind of pinch it with one hand lightly, and then plop the zipper into just that foyer part, so it should be able to sit there, and pinch it, and then I pinch the zipper pull and just give it a slight little tug onto the chain. Again, this is so much easier with my other zipper chain. I kind of hate this stuff. The small stuff just tends to be a little bit more finicky. Yeah, like even just getting it to zip, it's a little aggravating. I'm going to burn this. And then you can just kind of zip it out of the way. So I'm going to start by joining these together. So just about right there. And we're going to do it exactly the same way we did it on the other side. Sewing over it once, back stitching, sewing over it again, back stitching. Cutting the thread, and then snipping over excess. I'm just gonna give it a light. Okay. And then we have to do the same thing for the collar. And mine is like basically perfect, which is so crazy. So I'm just going to double check that, but I think it's going to be piecing them together. This obviously was not even, so I did not cut that well. But I'm gonna line up the bottom where it will actually be exposed, because I can kind of fix that jagged top a little bit easier. Hide that away. So I'm gonna back stitch. Mine's very thick there. Right sides together. Cut the thread so that we're left with finished touches. Looks so nice. This seam will be exposed. Not really exposed. I mean, you'll see it like this, but it won't be sealed away. So if you do have raw edges there, it might be nice to bind them or just fold them over, so that everything gets nice and sealed. So now we just have to close up this final hole. Again, I'm just gonna make sure everything kind of lays nice and flat. Hold it down and then start sewing a little bit further back from where I stopped, back stitching and then finishing it off. Then when I get back to where I started, sew past it, back stitch, cut my thread. And now we have a finished zipper and zipper shield. And next up is to attach the two sides together. So we are just going to, if you care about your like pinwheel lining up perfectly. Might be a good time to like take a little mark. I honestly am pretty okay if they're not perfectly lined up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, where is this? I can kind of eyeball based off of this. And then by folding this guy in half, kind of mark just about even. So we are sewing the right sides together of the side fabric and the zipper. So we're just gonna line that up. I'm gonna open that seam again. So back stitch at the start. I'm gonna back stitch over the seam, and we're just gonna go all the way around, attaching the side to the zipper. You will most likely have to move your zipper pull just out of the way when you hit it. So we're just gonna go all the way around. Right before I hit that zipper pull, I'm just gonna pick up my foot and slide the zipper past and continue until I hit where I started. And when I get back to the start, I'm just gonna back stitch, cut my thread. This is my favorite part of any project, which is flipping it. So now we have this full thing. I'm gonna break that thread off, find the zipper pull right here, and you should be able to just pull it apart. So satisfying. Give it the good old flipperoo. Oh my god, it's so cute. It's so big. So cute. I'm just gonna zip it closed for now. My blue fabric is definitely like fraying a bit, but I honestly don't really care. I can always go back with a serger and serge it. So then I'm just gonna flip the collar down and check those seams, make sure that everything is perfect. Wow, this is pretty freaking cute. It's really cute. Okay, so our next step is the stuffing. Again, if you didn't do the zipper, go ahead. We have to do a lining. So you could just like stuff things in here if you had like blankets or something, but since I am using scraps, and if you're using anything like down that's loose, it's not really great. I don't know if you've ever had like a dog bed and you unzip it to wash it and it's like foam piles and like little pieces, and then you have to like keep it all in a trash bag while you wash it. It's not really super ideal. So we're gonna make a lining to go, and then we're gonna stuff the lining and that will go inside. The lining will be the same exact process, except instead of cutting all these individual squares, we're just gonna trace an outline of the top and bottom, and then use the same dimensions. I am going to over stuff this slightly because that's how you make things fancy, and it's gonna settle. So I'd rather have a little bit more. I can always seam rip and like stuff extra in it. But as these scraps get compacted down, I might have to go back in. So it's kind of a good idea. This is what they tell you to do with like any pillows or anything stuffed, is you want to stuff it more. So if you have like an 8x10 pillowcase, you actually want to use like a 9x11 pillow insert and like overstuff it. So I'm going to add 1/2 inch to all the measurements to just really make sure that this is nice and fluffy. So let's get started. We're so close to being done. Okay, so for my lining, I have this extra. This is duck canvas, so it's super tough, but it is also kind of soft. So it shouldn't rip or tear. It also shouldn't like stain easily. And I really don't care about this. This is a scrap. So I'm just gonna lay this out. And I'm actually gonna fold it in half so that I can cut out the top and bottom in one swoop. And just lay it all out. It is a little lumpy, but that's okay because no one's gonna see this and it doesn't really matter. So you can lay it and you could just take chalk all the way around and trace it. We want to add a 1/2 inch feels like a lot, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a 1/2 inch to all of it. I'm just going to eyeball it. But you can take a measuring utensil and like just clink it all the way around. I'm just gonna eyeball and vaguely trace out the shape. So let's do it. Okay. So we have top and bottom. So I am just going to cut. I did 15.5 before, so we're just going to do solid 16. Same method, kind of marking. This is quite a bit frayed right here and uneven, so I'm just going to cut that off. This is the lining. It really doesn't matter. No one's ever going to see it. You're going to see it only the one time a year you wash this thing. So now we are going to take these over to our sewing machine and we are just going to sew all the way around. Since I know that this is about right, and I honestly don't care if it is too big, I can just kind of fold it over to take it in. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to sew down the side of the edge first and then sew right sides together for everything, leaving a small, I don't know, for me, I will probably do a hand-sized hole, maybe 6 inches on one of the sides. And then we'll get stuffing. So let's go sew this. If you're type A, you probably hate what I just did. This was like the worst cutting, worst measuring. I don't even know how big this piece of fabric is. But yeah, I don't really care. I just want to be done at this point, and this part really doesn't matter. Ooh. Just line it up, right sides together. This fabric doesn't have a wrong side really, and start going all the way around. I'm not going to do relief cuts because, again, does not matter. This is just the sack to contain all the stuffing. You could honestly use a trash bag, but that would probably be a little loud. So we're just gonna do it the proper way and make a casing. Especially some of my scraps are like kind of big and clunky, or like foam. So this way, nothing like pointy will hurt your feet while you're laying, this is thick enough to keep everything together. I'm sewing with the same seam allowance. I have the sides attached to one part. Now I'm just gonna flip it over. Same thing on the other side, except I'm going to leave a 6-inch gap. So this is where it's important to make sure that you backstitch at the start of your seam. So backstitch so that when you're stuffing it, you don't accidentally rip it open more. Not that it really matters, but just for security. So I'm gonna stop sewing with about 6 inches left and make sure I go backstitch, words. God, I really need to shower, I'm sorry. So now we have the inside of the lining, and I am just going to flip it right side out, and then we will get stuffing. We are almost done. Like, we are so close. I'm gonna grab this. I'm just gonna start stuffing. I'm just so excited that this is actually happening, because I have said that I was going to do this for about a year now. So I'm so stoked to actually be doing this. I'm literally moving out of my house in a week. And since I got the chair that is upstairs, which was September of last year, now that it's 2025, September of 2023, I bought the chair that I have upstairs, and I have been like, oh, all we're missing is an ottoman, little floor poof. And we're moving, and I'm taking the chair with me. Right now I have no plans to sell it, but it's just really funny that, of course, moving is what motivated me, and we will only get a week of actually enjoying it up there. Just keep on stuffing. We want to overstuff it. So keep on stuffing, and then I will meet you here when you cannot stuff it any further. I didn't use all of the scraps, which is okay, because I'm making one of these for my friend, but I used a lot of scraps. I used majority of them. And now I have these scraps of down for making down blankets. And I just needed something a little fluffier to fill in the gaps. So I am just stuffing this down. Normally, well, I mean, I was originally planning on using this to stuff dog beds for my dog and his best friend, but this should be at least good enough to finish this off, and then I'll find something else to stuff the dog beds if I don't have enough. But if you're using stuffing or whatever, old blankets, old clothes, you just kind of want to keep on moving it around, because it will settle over time. So it is better to stuff it a little bit more full and have a little bit harder time getting it into the cover to start, because it might scrunch down. If you've ever had like a stuffed animal, when it gets old, it gets a little floppy. But the nice thing is you can always seam rip the hole back open and add more, which is kind of cool. So you can just like keep it nice and fresh. Before we seal this off, I'm just going to really make sure that it is stuffed to the brim. That is it. Okay. So the last step is to close off this hole. I kind of ripped mine a little bit bigger while I was doing this. And I am going to start sewing maybe about a ½ an inch before the opening actually begins, just to reinforce it, because we do want to keep this closed especially if you used scraps like me. Like, we do not want this opening and spilling everywhere. I have a hand sewing needle, I have thread and scissors. So I am just going to honestly double up my thread because this fabric is so thick. If you're using like a cotton or a linen, you're probably fine, but this is canvas, so it's pretty thick. So I'm just going to make a big old piece, and I am not going to sew this super well, if I'm being honest. If I cared a lot, I would probably do a ladder stitch to close it up, invisible seam, but since I know in the future I'm going to want to take this apart to restuff it, like maybe in a couple of years I'll need to add more stuffing. I'm just going to do probably a, oh, what is it called? A back stitch, I guess. So I'm going to make sure it's fully seamed. I'm not going to do like a basting stitch or something where it's really spread out and barely sealed. I do want to make sure that this actually stays sealed. Like if I'm washing the cushion and it's exposed for a while, like nothing's going to leak out of it. It sounds really gross, but that's the only word I can use right now, or think of right now. Okay. There we go. So I have a knot, I have a doubled up thread so it's nice and strong, and I am just going to grab this. Oh my god, don't rip my sweater. Okay, cool. So starting right here, which it looks like this side, maybe there was a little bit less fabric or something. I ripped it. I don't know. There's a little bubble, but that's okay. I'm just going to put that through. I am going to cut the tail on that just so it doesn't confuse me. And then I'm going to, I am doing like quite large stitches, I guess, not small. So they're probably, like on a machine, would be a size 5. But I'm going to sew forward and then go back through that original stitch. Through. So that's what the back looks like. First stitch, second stitch. And then, so you're kind of sewing backwards. So you go, there's your last stitch, so you go 2 forward. Make sure that these are nice and even. 2 forward, 1 back. So you end up with a straight line on both sides. When you're doing them this large, you do get like kind of these weird loops, but I don't care because no one's ever going to see this. I just want to make sure it's well sealed. So I'm going to do this the whole way down. Okay, this is what we call moment of truth. Remember, I also have not sewn this before. I looked up the pattern for this, but I didn't look at anything. So we really were in this together, and if I made a mistake, I will go back and fix this video. But as of right now, in this very moment, I have no idea how this is going to turn out because I've never done this before. Okay, and then we just zip our way around. Since it is so stuffed, it might be hard. You might have to like sit on it like an overfull suitcase to get it to zip nice and easy.
My roommates are sleeping, but I hope that this tutorial made sense and that you also got a beautiful floor poof. And I want to see yours. If you did make it, please send me a photo or video or comment below about how it turned out, because I'm so stoked for you. Bye.